Maybe for people that are social workers that kind of don't feel like they have a community around them to support them in their work. Would
Hmm.
you have any advice, or would it be different? Because it's a bit of a different setting versus like personal. I don't know if you'd have any advice.
Yeah, do you mean like building community at work,
Yeah.
essentially? Is that what you're okay.
Or sometimes when you deal with work problems, right? Then
Mhm.
or having people like help you understand or process
Mhm.
when something happens and it kind of shakes you a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I would say, and I'm still working through this myself, so I'm constantly learning and I just want to acknowledge that. But I would say like find people that you can trust, even if it's one person. If there's one coworker that you have that you feel is able to hold space for you. And when you walk away from those interactions, you're feeling validated and heard and supported. I think that's so important. And so I think over time it can be hard when you don't have when you haven't started that, or you might be working in an environment where you maybe there can be some interpersonal dynamics that make it hard. And so that's definitely a reality for sure. But if it is possible, I think starting with even seeing whose interactions make you feel validated and supported and that you can trust them. And then I think if they're going through something and they come to you, if you have capacity, being open to receiving that, because then they also build trust with you, and then you also going to them to kind of ask, I need something. Is it possible for me to ask for this? And so um when difficult things happen, like especially in the workplace, and you need people to process with, I think if you build relationships and connections with people, even if you haven't gone to them with anything before, but you start to build that relationship and that connection with people, um in times of crisis or in times of turmoil or in times where it feels really difficult, it can be a lot easier to then ask because you already have that connection with that person and you have that relationship. And then what you're doing essentially is opening a doorway to be like, we can mutually support each other, or I might just need support, if that makes sense.
Like a lot of people are willing to help once you kind of have even a very small or brief connection, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you can use that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any final advice for people that are maybe feeling isolated or feel like they don't have a community or that kind of thing? Or if you want to jump in with any other stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd be happy to answer that question. And then I don't know, maybe just I would definitely also love to reference this blog post that I've been referencing, and like some work that I think is important, because it goes so much, uh it goes beyond me for sure. Like this idea is so rooted, and I think it's so important. I'm so glad we had this conversation. So, um, yeah, I think in terms of people who are either struggling to ask for help or who want a community around them or figuring out where to start, I think a couple of things. So, of course, the validation is really important. So, I would say the first thing is that it's okay to be afraid or hesitant or uncomfortable when you first start to think about asking for support or leaning on people or being leaned on, even, right? And I feel like so many feelings can come up. Those are just some of them that I listed, but even feeling guilt, like, oh my gosh, I have to ask for help. Like, what does this mean about me? Am I a burden? Like, those things are very natural thoughts, and it's okay to think them. But I think when you're having when you're in this process of finding community, I think it's important to be compassionate with yourself and remind yourself that needing other people is natural and it's a human thing. So there's nothing wrong with you But I think that mm, the our reactions to ourselves are also so important as we go on this journey. Um, and so, yeah, I think that's what I would suggest just from my perspective. But also, I think sometimes it can be helpful to build community by like reaching out to people around you. I know Zoom school is a thing, like people are always on Zoom, but like going to virtual events and even like connecting with someone after. I've definitely met like poets that way in the pandemic. But also like if there's something that you're interested in, let's say it's like a cause that you care about, around maybe justice or organizing, or even if it's something unrelated to those things, like see what's happening in your community and don't be afraid to get involved. It could be going to a meeting, it could also just be going to like a crochet club. There's so many different ways um to build that connection. Yeah. So mhm.